Welcome back to the Nullified Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 42, and I think it's episode 8. Some people are calling it episode 8, some people are calling it episode 9, but on this podcast, it's episode 8. In any case, I am joined by two of my friends. One of them should need no introduction, I think, on the Nullified Take channel. She's been on the channel quite a few times, and from RealityRealnesss with 3 S's, Chantel is back on the podcast here today to talk to me about Survivor 42 for the very first time this season. Chantel, how are you?
I'm doing great. This season on a whole it's been great. I guess compared to 41, which I didn't particularly enjoy, I think that 42 has been really fun. It could be because like with these twists, I know that they're coming, so it's not going to piss me off so much when they come and like ruin someone's game. Like I know that they're going to be happening, so now I want to just look purely on how people react to things. So with that, and the cast just seems to be adapting a lot better to these twists. I'm enjoying the season a lot. So I'm really happy to be here talking with you, getting out all my Survivor thoughts, frustrations, Jeffisms, get them all out there and talk to both of you.
Well, I can't wait to talk to you about it. Like a lot of people may think that Chantel and I talk about Survivor off air quite a lot, but most of the time when we talk about things, it's about the challenge. So I'm really interested to know what Chantel's thoughts are on this season. But now let's go over to a person here that is making their second appearance on the Nullified Take channel. And it is my friend Richard, all the way from South Africa. For those who don't know, Richard will be one of the trio of us here on the Nullified Take that will be talking about Survivor South Africa this season as well. So this is a great opportunity for people to get to know you, Richard. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. I'm feeling awesome. I mean, it's like 2 a.m., but people wouldn't tell because of my energy. So I'm doing awesome as always.
Yeah, Richard keeps sending me messages at 4 a.m. in South Africa sometimes. So he's a bit of a night owl, similar to, I believe Omar saying in the beginning of the season, he's going to be an owl in the dark and he's going to wait for his opportunity to pounce. And we saw a lot of action here from Omar this episode, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. Let's get into the start, I guess, of this episode. We had a big vote. Romeo copped some votes coming his way, but ultimately he threw a hinky vote at High, and there seems to be this continuous rivalry here, Chantal, that is forming between High and Romeo out there on the island. And it's so strange to see because at the merge, we saw them kind of bonding over their experience. And now it seems like these two just can't see eye to eye. What has been your take on, I guess, this whole dynamic between Romeo and High out there on the island?
Well, okay, I understand that people have, conflicts of interest and they don't necessarily get along. And yes, they may have had that moment where they're kind of bonding over like experiences, with being gay and American and, how people like High was out and Romeo was a little bit more, not sharing that with everybody. And so like, that was a really nice moment that we saw a couple episodes ago. And I actually don't know what happened. I don't know when it completely switched, but I felt that Romeo, he kind of played it, in my opinion, the wrong way. I know that it doesn't feel great to feel as though you are the number one target. And we've noticed that he's increasingly getting more and more paranoid. And so I totally understand for him to be a little bit squirrely and, his name was on the chopping block, but it's not the time to go and like put a hinky vote on High and get High all riled up. I get it. He wanted to see him, get all out of sorts and stuff like that and maybe blow up and maybe the target would go on him. Yes, but he seems to have more power than you right now in this game. So it's just going to blow back on you. So I just thought that it was really short-sighted of him to retaliate and throw a vote onto High and not expect it to come back at him at some point. I don't know why he was continuing to create this enemy with High when he could have easily been like, okay, let's bygones be bygones. Let's shift, let's change, let's like pivot and maybe work together moving forward. So he just created or like really reinforced this enemy that he has with High. So I'm not sure how it started, but he didn't really help it out at all.
No, I agree with you 100%. Christian says, "Hey guys, welcome to the live stream here, Christian." And Christian is also saying, "Skinny Dude Alliance again between them." But sadly, it's the Skinny Dude Alliance that never actually formed between both High and Romeo out there. Richard, both you and I have spoken off air. We both rate High. As a player, we rated him earlier in the season, but I'm starting to feel like High is getting pretty close to the sun here now. He's got a target on his back where Romeo is seeing him as the instigator, the person that is running that alliance. And I do feel like Romeo feels to a certain degree that maybe High replaced him in the hierarchy here with the likes of Drea and so forth. And maybe there's a little bit of jealousy out there as well, and High fitting in with this group a little bit better than what he is. And it looks like he's really struggling to find himself out there and to fit in with these group of people that is at the merge.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because obviously it all started with Romeo and Drea being some sort of like a duo, and then Drea sort of like drifted out of that to form an alliance with High. It's almost like a situation where, you know, your your girlfriend dumps you and then starts dating your friend. It's like, you know, you're leaving me out, you know, something like that. But I mean, with Romeo, I mean, part of the reason why he said that he threw High's name out there was so that people could see that, hang on, this guy's not this, you know, put up and well organized person. He can be chaotic. He can be entitled. And we are seeing it in the edit. I'm not sure if it's hinting that maybe High could be in trouble, but yeah, he pretty much is sort of like flying close to the sun. But you know, I don't know. It sort of does come across as a bit, you know, off-putting because he's like, "Oh, Romeo, you wrote my name down," but he did the exact same thing. It's almost like the Mike and Chanel situation where they both wrote each other's names down, but one feels entitled that, you know, because you wrote my name down, we're done, you know.
Did he actually though? I thought that the only people that wrote down Romeo's name was Omar, Chanel, and there wasn't one other person, but I didn't think it was High. I don't think that he actually did.
I should have checked before coming onto the podcast. I'm not too sure who voted that way as well.
Marianne?
But I think could have been, yeah.
I'd have to look it up. But
actually,
I don't remember
Marianne. I remember Marianne and Omar voting the same way, actually. So I do think it was Marianne because Omar kept his cover. It was one of the comments I made in the previous recap that he kept his cover with Marianne and he voted outside of the majority, which I thought is very smart. Like, I think Omar is playing all angles and he is running circles around these people out there on the island at the moment. I'm very impressed by Omar's game. One of the things as well, just before we move on from High, that I thought wasn't great game management by him at this stage is that he kind of blew up at a few people and, you know, said, "Hey, Tori, did you vote for me? Oh, no, I know it's you, Romeo," type of thing. And I think that being that sort of aggressive towards people that potentially could have voted at you in front of other people don't put you in the best light in front of them. And a lot of people may say High is getting frazzled in the game here and we want someone who's going to be cool, calm, and collected that we want to work with later on in the game. So I don't think it's the best way of managing it. Now, obviously, I'm saying this from the comfort of my mic here at home. I understand when you're out there, you're going to play this very different. Yeah, we're very cozy here, and we can make these comments very, very easily. Dolores, welcome to the live stream as well. Dolores is a frequent listener of the channel. Dolores says, "I don't understand why target someone that appeared like he was genuinely bonding with. I feel we just didn't see something, but he is paranoid for a reason." And yeah, Romeo is feeling out of place, and I think that some of those insecurities and probably things that we as an audience don't understand, things that he may have gone through in his own life, and I'm speculating here, prior to going onto the show where maybe he's felt like he's been ostracized from a group or he's not in. And I think Survivor brings out insecurities in you, and then that plays out when you're out there on the island as well. Another interesting thing that happens here early on, Chantel, is that we see Rox finally trying to play the game a little bit here. You know, he's trying to get the boys together. He wants to get a boys alliance. We've just seen a big boys alliance in Australian Survivor. Thankfully, this one's not going to last, though. But he tried his best, right? He went around and talked to everybody. But High and Omar, he couldn't have read them any more incorrectly than what he did in this episode.
The thing is that I totally appreciate people trying to gain numbers and getting a group together to protect themselves. I think it's what you do need to do, but you also need to read the people that you're doing that with. You need to see if that's something that they would go for. Like, not everybody's going to go for the big alpha male alliance. That's not what everybody's kind of looking or identifies with. And so I think the fact that he lost sight of the fact that you kind of have to appeal to everybody when you're making an alliance, and that it's not just going to be advantaging you, right? like Rocksroy is going to have like a really great advantage if he has all the guys working together. Like he's going to be safe for a while. Right. That's great for him. But is it great, as Omar kind of put out there? He's like, well, that's not really great for me, because if there's no more other people left, like I don't necessarily have a chance of winning immunities, and then I'll be plucked off next. So I totally understand both sides of like wanting to be protected, and then another side being like, this doesn't really do anything for me. So why would I be so excited about doing this? So I think that it was a good idea, but it wasn't executed well because he didn't read the people that he wanted to work with well.
Richard, what did you think of, I guess Rocksroy's approach here and trying to get this thing together? I know you would have jumped all over it, being an alpha male yourself. You would have been like, yes, let's jump in, let's go, let's get this thing wrapped up to the end here. But how would you have reacted if Rox came up to you with this plan of getting the guys together?
I mean, personally, in my experience in playing online realities, also survivor games, anyone but me. Like if people are going to want to target certain group, as long as not me, I'm down with it. But I think this Rocksroy thing actually goes back to what Tori said. I think Tori's like a psychologist or like a therapist, and said that Rocksroy is a bit of a narcissist. So he sort of looks at himself and how things benefit him, and he doesn't really do much investing in terms of seeing how it could benefit other people. And I think it's a typical mistake that people do, is that you think that you can control people, and if you sort of like give them the certainty that, hey, you're in alliance, you're protected, so that alone is incentive why people would want to work together, like a all males alliance or something like that. And we also did see a clip of this sort of like of Rocksroy being sort of like missing social cues, because one of the things he says, he's like, because they were at the well, and then he's like to Hi, what do you think? Who do you want to go home tonight? And then Hi's like, I want Romeo to go home. And then Rocksroy simply jumps and is like, hey, I think we shouldn't go for that. We should go for an all males alliance. And then, Hi sort of like says, hey, you asked me the question, so let me finish explaining before you start interjecting. So he does, so we sort of do see these small things where, he misses social cues, and, I think it contributes to what could have led to his demise.
Yeah, I think you go ahead, Chantal.
I was just going to say that, like, he might have even had success if he didn't say all male alliance, right? Like he just didn't need that to be the selling feature. He's like, I just want to get a group of us together, the people that I trust, the people that are like-minded, that we can all look out for each other. Like, what do you think about these people? Do you think that we could all work together? Like, I'm really good with Mike. I think I can pull him in. What about you, Hi? Do you think that maybe you and Omar, do you think we could all work together? You know what I mean? And be building it, making it seem as though it's like people that want to be working together, instead of like a really unsavory sounding all males alliance when you're just like, I don't identify with that. No, thank you. So he could have made it happen even with the same people. He just didn't have the right approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also I think it was quite telling that when he came to Omar and spoke to him about it, Omar told us, the audience, that this is the first time Rocksroy has talked any game to him, trying to get a male alliance together. And I think Survivor players for the future, if you ever listen to this podcast, you need to build credibility with people. Yes. Trust and credibility is important for you to make any kind of move. You can't just go to someone last minute unless they feel like they're at the bottom. And Omar does not feel like he's at the bottom. He does not feel like he doesn't have agency in the game. So there was really no incentive here for him to work with Rox going forward. And Hi just had this massive blow up at Romeo at that point. So read the room, read your audience. Like, Hi was never going to go that way. Also, just wanted to say hello to Zoe here, the Hangout room in the live stream. Zoe will also be at some point on the podcast and will be the other part of the trio that will be covering Survivor South Africa as well. So looking forward to that. Christian says the male alliance here did crash and burn. Ooh. And that they did, indeed. It did not go their way at all.
I'm kind of picturing Rocksroy as like a telemarketer, like cold calling people, and just like think that he has a really good bargain for you. And people are just like, please don't call me. I'm not warmed up to this phone call
now,
yet.
As someone here on this podcast that have actually done cold calling before, I will say I would hire someone like Rocksroy to do cold calling, because you need that, I guess, obliviousness to people going to say no to you, and you shouldn't have your feelings hurt by it. And I feel like Rox is that kind of person that would pick up the phone 100 times to get two people to say yes, and you only need two people to say yes to make the
Yeah.
quota. So I actually, I know it wasn't meant as a compliment and an actual endorsement of Roxroy's skills here. I do actually think he wouldn't do too bad at cold calling, But we'll talk more about Rox as the episode continues, because there's definitely more to dive into, I think, when we get to the end of this episode. Let's move on to the immunity challenge here. This is a very, I guess, old school immunity challenge. We've seen it many a times on the show. You have to climb onto this platform and balance, and they're going to divide them into two different teams here, with two people winning immunity, two tribes going to tribal council. Now, Richard, you're a purist of the show. You've watched it for a long time, but I do know you're someone that also enjoys some of the things that they are trying to change and mix up to keep the show fresh. What did you think as a fan of the show, seeing them split the tribe up here into two different factions and the immunity idol being there for two different people at this game? So to try and mix things up at this stage in the game, did you like this configuration?
I mean, it's not the best thing, but in terms of just being a viewer, I mean, seeing there's some joy you can get from seeing people scramble and being in a tough position to sort of fight to, make a plan from the small numbers they have. I mean, like I said, I've played some online reality games. I'm not sure if Chantel has played some Sequester or something like that, but it happens a lot where you're thrown in these positions where you're like, hang on, I didn't expect this to happen, and you're forced to sort of like come up from the ground and make something of it. I think it's an okay twist, and we actually did see some interesting and funny gameplay at the end of it, so it's cool with me.
Chantel, what did you think of this? You look like you weren't too happy about the fact that they mixed it up a little bit here, but what did you think about it in this episode with this specific group of people, I guess?
Well, this is the thing, is that I don't mind the idea of having like two tribals and like kind of shake things up. Two people go home, two immunities. I don't really mind that. I just wish that there were more stakes. Like, I know that they want it just to be a completely random group of people, but I think it would be really interesting if they had to do a schoolyard pick or something like that. And then people would see, oh, shoot, I'm on the bottom here. Now I really need to win this immunity. And then they're like, oh, shoot, all of our friends together or whatever, if they're not playing strategically, then they might have to vote between their friends. And so I just wish that there was a few less rock draws and luck elements of the game, and I would like to see people having a little bit few more opportunities to strategize with, like, okay, if I'm going to have this person on my team, I definitely would want to have this person, because I think that with this configuration of people that I'd be able to get out my particular target. So I just would like to have more room for people to be able to strategize, and then it's not as likely to get twist screwed. Like you kind of will know your position. You'll know that you'll have to work really hard to win that immunity, and then you'll see how the chips fall. So it's okay.
I get you.
I'll give it a 6 out of 10. No, 5.5. 5.5.
I think I was high coming into the podcast on it because I was like, oh, wow, they mixed up the dynamics a little bit. They didn't allow for a power alliance. Like, probably the male alliance was even stopped because of this whole thing, and it could have gone in a completely different direction. But that is me thinking about it, results focused, because we were lucky that we did lose two people in this episode who weren't the biggest players of the season. Now, if we lost, like, say, a Drea, or we lost like someone like a High in this episode, or someone that actually was playing the game, or an Omar, we would have all been devastated, and we would have said, oh, well, they got swap screwed at this stage in the game, and there's an element of luck involved. And I know I'm jumping ahead slightly here, but High also spoke to Jeff about this at the tribal council that he was at. He said, in a season such as this, where it's twist heavy, there's way more luck than skill involved, and he said that to Jeff's face, you have to play different. And I'm like, Jeff, how can you eat this up? How can you be happy about the fact that your show has become a circus and it's all about luck now? It's not skill anymore, like, to get to the end. And I'm saying this with a pinch of salt, because I mean, obviously there is also still some great players in this game that are navigating those twists, but I actually agree in hindsight with you, Chantel, now that I think about it. I just think we were very lucky that it shaped up the way that it did here in this episode, and we lost the people that we lost.
Yeah, totally agree. Because, I would just been so annoyed. It's just like, just the numbers didn't fall in your favor, so you're out of the game. And that happens all the time. Swap screwed is a thing, oh, they got swap screwed. Like, who's going to get swap screwed this episode? Like, somebody always gets screwed. And so that's why I wish a little bit that we could have some agencies so that they could, like, pick who's on their tribe at least, so they can use some sort of strategy if they choose to, and then it gives people a fighting chance at their position in the game.
And isn't it interesting that, Rox, Roy, Mike, and all these people are like, we want an all-males alliance, and then somehow the Survivor gods just manipulate the event to make sure that one group is just all men, and, they have to sort of like have an idea of what would happen if the male alliance were to happen and they were in a final 5 position. So, and poetically enough, the person that came up with it got chopped.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to have massive ramifications for the rest of the game as well, this vote that went down, but we will get into that in a little bit. Let's talk about the actual result here on the immunity challenge. I thought it was quite entertaining to watch this time because the sea, the ocean there was extremely choppy, similar to that challenge where they nearly drowned, I think, at the team portion of the game early on. It seemed really difficult to balance on this, and ultimately Jonathan and Lindsay, that was impressive to see them go head to head here. I think Lindsay has been holding back for a large portion of this game, and we haven't seen her go full beast mode out there yet, but she seems to be very capable at winning challenges as well. But ultimately, Jonathan and Hai, they're going to win the immunity here. Hai is very happy to win it. Jonathan, obviously, Jeff is very happy very quickly that he's won this one here as well. And I do think that we're going to see, I'm putting it out there, Jonathan's got a taste for victory now. I could see him win more immunities going forward in the game here. Like, Survivor's about momentum, and Tori's out.
Coming. I think that's coming for him. I don't know if he doesn't win the next immunity. I think that he's done for. I do. We'll probably get into it a little bit more, but just the way that he interacted when he had a little bit of power wasn't, I don't think, savory for some of the people that were in his previous tribe. And I think that if they have the opportunity, they'll be like, do you know what? I think I need him gone at this point. So I don't think he's going to be lasting very much longer.
Do you think that, and again, this is me sort of playing devil's advocate here, and I can see him very easily falling, but do you think that Omar calms Jonathan down even further and gets back in there and does what he's been doing the whole season, which is to keep Taku strong? Like, he's been preaching it throughout the whole season. He said, let's not split and divide here. We need Taku numbers. I can very easily see Taku being the dominant tribe here because they're the only one that have not lost a single person yet. Marianne does get annoyed with Jonathan in this episode, and we are moving into this next portion of the episode, so we might as well talk about it. She does get annoyed, and she says that, Jonathan is treating me like a kid. He's leading me around. He's not really asking me for my opinion. But also, Marianne's got a great relationship with Lindsay and with Omar, and Omar was not in this tribe configuration. Is he the secret source that could come back and calm the rest of those Taku members down, Chantal? Or do you really think that it's just done for him now? Like, he's got no chance at mending those bridges?
I think the secret sauce is Jonathan not having any power and having to rely on other people to keep him safe. I really do. And I'm not even trying to say that in like a mean way at all or a funny way. Like, so far he's not had any protection. And so he's had to really rely on the relationships that he built with Taku, the fact that he did provide for them and he helped them win a lot of challenges before the merge. And so now he's been vulnerable for two vote outs, two tribals. And so he got power now. And we see now what he does when he feels safe, when he can make decisions, when he can call the shot. And he immediately decides to take that role on and goes and tells people what we're doing tonight. We're blindsiding Drea. That's what we're doing. And Marianne, you're going to be the backup vote because we're going to flush your idol out. Like, why does she get to be the backup vote? And I was totally with Lindsay being like, well, why would you make her be the backup vote? Why wouldn't you make it be Tori? Yeah. Because like, we don't want Marianne to go if Drea decides to play her idol. And he's like, Drea's not going to play her idol. It's like, of course she's going to feel like playing her idol, because if you're going to be going for somebody and the backup vote is somebody that has an idol and you're going to try to flush out an idol here, like if I were Drea, I'd be like, well, if we're going for Marianne, I must be the backup. And if she plays it, then I'm going to be going home. So I'm probably going to be playing my idol. Like, I think that she was probably going to be playing her idol, even though some people are saying like, no, she had no idea, no clue. I just don't think that she was that clueless that she wouldn't be feeling a little bit nervous about, playing her idol. So he was just going around and telling people what to do, not listening to reason or rationale. I think that this is indicative of what he is like with power. And I don't think that that's going to rub Omar the right way if that situation kind of happens again. And we see in the next episode, Omar and Lindsay talking a bit. I can't remember exactly what they're saying, but I feel like they're coming to the conclusion that maybe it's time to take out Jonathan, make their tribe look a little bit less strong, like allow him to, get out of the game, and the three of them can stick together, the three Taku. So that's what I think should go moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens.
Richard, what do you think of all of this Jonathan-ness in this episode and how he, had the power going a little bit to his head? Do you agree with Chanel? Do you think he's running out of runway here?
Yeah, I do think that, because, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but earlier on in the season when they were at the challenge, and then Jonathan it said something like, our tribe is strong. I forgot what the Taku tribe is really strong. And then Marianne and Omar after the challenge were like, what's up with that guy? Why is he telling other people that we're sort of like a tight 4, tight 5? So I think a similar thing could happen here, where they like, he's proving that he's sort of like the mindless, muscle man, and maybe it is the time to go. But strategically thinking, I don't think going for Jonathan would be a good situation, because there's 4 original Taku, then there's 2 of the others. If they vote out, what's his name,
That's
Jonathan,
true,
then the 2 twos could work together to take out the 3. Maybe they should stick together for just one more vote, then the game can open up a bit.
I think, just to let you know, Chantal, I know you mentioned the next on, and they had High saying, or they had a few different people talking, and Lindsay saying, oh, we should go for this person and that person, but they didn't actually say who the person is that they're targeting next episode. I think, personally, it's High. I think High's gone.
I can see that as well. I can see it High as well. You want
He's
High
gone?
Oh, no, Richard, you don't want
like, especially now, because I really liked him at the beginning. I saw some similarities between me and him. But these small things where he's just annoyed that Romeo is causing chaos, trying to fight for his life, or, is angry at people for writing his name down. Those small things are sort of like making him lose points on my sort of like list. So
he's playing emotionally at the moment. I feel like he's letting his emotions drive him. And in Survivor, it's not always a good thing to play an emotional game. Nothing to High as a person. I think he's a great guy, and he's probably a top bloke, but we're talking about the gameplay here. I think he definitely played it wrong here at this stage in the game.
So the reason why I think it would be Jonathan over High, like I think that they're making us believe that it could be High, and like I could see a scenario where it could be, absolutely. But I think it might be Jonathan for what happened with Lindsay, and then that whole tribal council and how everything went down. I'm sure that she's relaying that whole scenario with him, and that's kind of why I'm kind of leaning more towards it being Jonathan that they're deciding around, because I don't know if Omar and Lindsay both right now think that High is the target, right? Like I could see Lindsay explaining about Jonathan, but I don't necessarily see Omar explaining about High. So that's what the kind of the reason why I'm leaning that way. But I can see High be the target.
Yeah. So Dolores here says, no, not High. He's my winner pick preseason. And you know what, Dolores? He's my winner pick preseason as well. He's my number 1 guy pick and winner pick for the season. So I don't want him to lose, but I've got a very bad record with picking winners, and then they end up not making it all the way. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the case here.
If I'm ever on a show, please don't pick me.
yeah. I'm like the kiss of death. If I come in and I'm like, this person's winning, they're gone. So I don't know, for those Survivor players that are coming back for Survivor, Return of the Outcasts on Survivor South Africa, I hope, for your sake, I don't pick you as my number 1 to win that season, because it's probably not going to be good for you. I did want to go back to the Jonathan thing, because there's kind of a few interesting, funny points here. So him and Lindsay talking, and he's so confident about his plan, and he's like, I've got the immunity win now. So a lot of people take it easy here, but this is when you need to go full throttle because you're safe. And it's like the exact wrong advice for anyone playing Survivor. Like if you've won immunity, and if you're a big guy like him, you take a massive seat back and you let other people dig the hole or dictate, unless you feel like the vote is going to go in a way where it's going to get one of your allies out of the game. You shouldn't be burning social capital at a stage in the game where you can actually sit back and relax. It's like one of the few times you can sit back and relax in the game. it was funny to me when he was so confident about his plan and he had that conversation with Lindsay and she just dismantled it in one sentence saying, hey, if Marianne goes home, Drea plays the idol, we lose the idol and we lose the extra vote. And you could just see the gears turning in his head and he didn't have an immediate response. But then he went into defense mode because he didn't want to be seen as the guy that was wrong and strategically not making the right decision, which is funny.
He doubles down and you're just like, why are you doubling down on this? Like, clearly this is the incorrect read, sir. Like you like clearly it's illogical for you to continue to want to put a backup vote on somebody that you do not want to go out. You never throw a backup vote on someone that you don't actually want to go out to some degree. And another thing, though, I just wanted to throw in there too, is that they had this whole alliance of 7 now, like that the reason why what's her name? L. What's the girl with the L's name?
Lydia.
Lydia. She went out because like it looked like she was turning on that 8, and so that's why they ended up getting her out, right? Yeah. And so they have 7 left. They got out Chanel, and then now they're going to go and turn on their own already, Jonathan. Like, I think that that's also really disingenuous too. And I think it makes him look bad that he immediately wants to go against that. And I think that, is also not really great when Tori wasn't part of that 7 and part of people that were fighting to keep you and deciding to keep you because you're part of their alliance. Because maybe they would have turned on you and taken you out instead of Lydia in that tribal council when you and Marianne were also both vulnerable. So
the only reason I can think of in my head for why that vote changed, and again, obviously there's a lot that we don't see on the TV show. We only get a very small snippet of what happened out there, but I think everybody is aware that Drea's got advantages, like they knew she's got an idol. And in his mind, he needed to make that decision, like who's the biggest threat to me at this point? Is the person with 2 immunity wins that could win an immunity from me, or could she be a shield for me? Because at least I can say, well, Tori's won more than me. And Drea's got an idol. So I can kind of see where that conclusion came from. It's still the wrong way to go about it, the way he tried to make it work, but I can kind of see where he's thinking that way in a broken way. And I also think him losing, I will only reiterate this again, him losing Omar in this tribe, I think really exposed him as a game player. And I think that Omar is the person who's keeping him calm and in check, because I do think they've got a very tight alliance where they've said this from the start, that Omar is his brain shield, is the person who actually is going to go out there and make these strategic decisions. He did not have that person there. Now, he definitely should have given more credit to Lindsay and listened to her, because Lindsay to me seems like a very capable and rational player out there. And I did feel for her, because you could clearly see that she wants to work with him, but she's like, man, I'm stuck with this guy that's just not listening to me. And I'm so frustrated at this guy right now. And I think there's a lot of women out there that have felt that way about men at times. So, it's just playing out on our screen in front of us, Chantel. A big reaction there from you.
Well, it was just so classic that like she was being calm, rational, just laying out some alternatives, some facts. And he immediately is like, basically like, you're wrong. And this is why you're wrong. And you're freaking out all over nothing. And she's just like, okay, I'll just pretend like I'm not freaking out. Like, well, I'm not freaking out, but I'll just sit back and let you do what you want to do. Yeah. It's just frustrating that sometimes women have to take a back seat when there's a really bold personality that really needs to have their agenda be heard, and they are making the decisions and they are right. And it was a very classic moment that we see all the time with the woman in the situation, just kind of biting their tongue and allowing the alpha man to act that way. So,
but it is interesting to see like Lindsay in this role, because she is an alpha woman, and like you've got very other strong women this season as well. So it's
picking and choosing your battles.
Yeah, it's picking and choosing your battle, knowing when, and she does. I mean, some people could criticize it and say she should have just told him how it is, but she's still playing a game for $1 million. And she's got to navigate this guy, and she I thought did it really well this episode.
I don't know if I would do so well, because I would probably be like, my face doesn't hide any sort of emotions or things that I feel. So I just probably like be looking at him like he's an idiot. I tend to make that face often, like this, you're really dumb, and I kind of make people feel dumb sometimes. I think I'd do that.
I've gotten that face a lot, Richard. Whenever it comes to the challenge drafts that we've been doing, I get that face all the time. Now, we're going to go over to the other camp here, and that's the original Taku camp where the men are all together. They've got to make a decision. This was the more straightforward one, I felt like, in this episode in regards to what was going to happen. The plan here should be, let's stick strong together here for Rox and Mike and Omar, potentially, to work against Romeo here, who is in the outs, and should be an easy vote. But Omar is definitely seeing things differently here. He's the one that goes to High and says, hey, we need to mix things up here. We actually do need to go and vote Rox out so that we can prevent this male alliance from happening, because it's not going to benefit our game here. And I found the conversation here very interesting between High and Mike, because Mike is saying that we will lose all credibility within our alliance if we turn on someone who's supposed to be a part of that tight alliance that we've currently got, which I thought was fair. But it does look like Omar and High together outvoted or overruled Mike in this situation. And this is the reason, Chantal, why I think that Mike is going to go out and he's going to lose trust at High here now. It's going to be very interesting, because I feel like he warned him. He said, don't do this. Someone's going to be to blame for this. You know, like Roxroy had there was a really big reaction when he was voted out in this episode. Where's the blame going to go? I think Omar is a great figure skater, and he's going to skate all the way around these bullets flying, and it's not going to come his way. It's going to come High's way here. It's going to be not so good for him, I feel like.
See, I don't know if he's going to actually get too many repercussions for this decision, because the only person that would really be fighting for him at this point would be Romeo, which clearly it wasn't, because Romeo took him out, or Drea. And Drea, I think, is a savvy enough player to decide, like, okay, this happened. Like, Roxroy was my number one or whatnot. He's voted out. I'm gonna have to pivot and move. I just don't see her coming for revenge for Roxroy. I don't know if their relationship was strong enough for her to feel like they were taking a stab at her for taking a stab at Roxroy. I think she knows his personality. I think she knows that people weren't necessarily getting along with him. And I think that she, after a little bit of explanation, she's going to understand why it happened. So I don't actually think that he's going to take a big hit for it. I think Mike, though, like, why didn't he just vote the way he wanted to vote and just pretend like he didn't flip? That's what I thought that was going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think he was probably the case for him is probably not wanting to be seen as the one person that's immovable, or that he can't change and shift with his alliance. And at the end of the day, I think that voting in a different way could always put someone else at risk, and you don't know who's got what advantages out there. So it's a dangerous one in a tribe configuration this small to do that. Sure. The reason that I'm sort of really interested in how Drea is going to react, and we'll obviously talk a lot about this when we get into the second tribal council, is that it may be that she understands why he got voted out and that there's personality issues. But I also think Drea is not only thinking about this game, she's also thinking about perception and how her community is going to perceive her outside of the game. Is it going to be expected of her to take revenge here for Roxroy being voted out? And has her game shifted slightly because she came to the sudden realization that, hey, we've just had two players of color here, one after the other, being voted out. Should there be repercussions? Should I go and look for who was the person who turned against them? And I'm wondering if she's going to look at it that way, or if she's going to have the presence of mind not to do that and to focus on the $1 million at the end here, because I don't know if it's the right thing for her to do, to make a big target of herself at this stage in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we did see, like, Drea initially in the game, one of her iconic quotes was that, I don't know these people, so of course she's going to do what's in her best interest. And in one of the tribal councils, she was like, she's imagining her mother saying that, Drea, that's not your family. So it's really interesting that after what happened in this recent episode, when she said that she's going to be resetting a game, going back to the drawing board and all of that, what does that actually mean? Does that mean she's going to play the vengeful game? Are we going to see her play the advantages? Are we going to see her voting out certain people so that her amulet gets stronger? It's all these questions. It's like a $1 million question, but Drea's an amazing character, so we'll see what she does.
Yeah. Georgette here says that I think High is on the chopping block. Christian says Mike is going to vote off High. Also says Omar is coming for High. And then Dolores says, I can see Mike targeting High as revenge for Rock. So it does seem there are a few people out there that thinks that's going to happen. And I think that we as an audience understand why people don't. But I think Mike and Jonathan kind of had a real connection with Roxroy, and they connected on being man's men and people who go out there and provide. And yeah, maybe not everybody understands that, but still there is a reason that they felt a certain connection to want to do this men's alliance out there. I do think there's going to be repercussions, and one thing I am very sure of is that none of it's going to go onto Omar, and he's the one who instigated this whole thing in the first place, which to me is brilliant gameplay by the guy. Like, I mean, he is playing out of this world for me at the moment, I think, on the show. But let's move on to Tribal Council number 2. This is going to be the bigger one, and I think we probably should spend a bit of time talking through this Tribal Council. They go into Tribal Council, and you can immediately see on Drea's face. I've watched this Tribal Council twice. I wanted to make sure I got every little bit of detail from this as much as I can. I knew it was going to be a big talking point this episode, and you know, I could think of nobody better to talk to than both Chantal, yourself, and Richard. You've got experiences I don't have, right? And I can't talk to that. I can relate somewhat a little bit to what Jonathan felt out there in regards to being really afraid things are going to blow back on him, because I would probably feel insecure in that moment myself as well if I put myself in his shoes, just afraid of how that could look like it's an edited show. You don't know what's going to make screen time, but there's a lot that we need to talk through here. And you could see Drea's, you know, her whole demeanor changes when she goes in. She looks shocked. And, you know, you've got Jeff there asking her up front, you know, Drea, does this change things for you seeing both Rox and Chanel there? And she immediately says, yes, it does. I just don't know how to process this yet. And you can see in real time her processing this thing. Yeah. She didn't go in there with an agenda. She didn't have a certain thing she wanted to say. That should be clear. But she does mention here that optically it does not look good. Seeing, and if I offend anybody by saying this, I don't know what the right term is, because normally in my day-to-day life, I don't talk ethnicity. I know Chantal is Chantal and Richard is Richard. And I know some people even see that as me not recognizing the culture of where Chantal and Richard comes from, but I do have a lot of respect for both of them. But, you know, she's black, she's an African American, and I believe Marianne is a Canadian American, or however they would like to identify. And if I am misrepresenting that, I do apologize. But they see two people of color here that are voted back to back out, and there is a history on this show of seeing minorities or black players in the game get voted out quite early on. And for Drea, this changes in her mind, because I've seen a lot of comments out there, people saying Drea voted for Chanel. Why is she saying this? There's a lot of that coming up. But at the end of the day, I think what Drea realized here is that these are two players now in a row. I'm potentially the third one on the block. This does not look good. And how am I going to be perceived outside of this game? There's a lot of weight that is on her shoulders that I would never understand. Because if I go and play Survivor personally, I would never have to go out there and play Survivor for my people, you could say, like for white people. Like nobody's looking at me and saying, Chris, you need to represent for us out there. But Drea feels that pressure that she needs to go and represent out there. Chanel, a lot happened here with Drea. And, you know, what was your thoughts on that pressure that she felt out there? Can you identify with being in a game such as Survivor and having that pressure on you, and how people may perceive you outside of the game for seeing the game unfold in a way that you potentially didn't think it was going to unfold at this point, and having two players that you can identify with so early out of the game?
So I totally understand where Drea was coming from, and that whole tribal. I was crying when I was watching it because it was such a visceral moment that I could completely put myself in their position, in their shoes, and understand exactly what they were feeling. And it's when you look and you see two people that look like you, that have lived through similar life experiences you have, that were taking out of the game, and you, the plan is for you to be taking out another person that looks like you out of the game, right? So even if she doesn't think it's her, she thinks it's supposed to be Marianne. That's supposed to be who the vote is. And she would be the third person sitting on there. And maybe it even would have been her. Who knows? And it's just realizing that, not that anybody voted these people out specifically because of their background and their skin color. I don't think it was any of that at all. But it was just seeing two faces and knowing that her vote would be going towards a third person, a third black person, losing their opportunity to play this game. She didn't want to be a part of that. And I also felt that Jeff was really kept on asking her over and over and over again what was going on. And I think that he was the person that brought up race first, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. You've seen it again. I only saw it the first time.
Yeah, he did ask. He asked her point blank. He asked her because she was talking around it, and she said, "Listen, maybe there's some subconscious thing going on here, which is fair, but obviously in that, when somebody says subconscious, I can see where Jonathan had a bit of a response to that as well. But I will talk about that when we get to that part. But he definitely asked her point blank, do you think that there was some racism involved, or this was based on race? And that's when she was kind of put into a corner, because I felt like she didn't want to go there. I honestly feel like she didn't want to go there, but Jeff took her there in the conversation.
She didn't want to go there, and it's for the reason why all the comments that are coming out about this episode. I don't know why I did it, but I went into Facebook Survivor 42. Like, I went into that group just to see what people were saying, and I'm really disappointed in a lot of people, in a lot of people's perspective. I'm not watching this show ever again. Everybody always makes it about race, and it's like, it's very convenient to not make it about race when your race isn't the one that's always being targeted, or being lynched, or being killed. Like, if it's not, it has nothing to do with you, so it shouldn't affect you. And it's just kind of like they feel as though Black people being on the show is ruining the show that they love, because they're always having to talk about race. It's like, well, you know what? I always have my skin color. I can't hide from it. And they can't hide from it. And when they see something that shows them that, like, oh my goodness, there's a couple people here that have gone out of the game, and I'm going to vote out another person that looks like them and like me, that's not a good sign. We need to be sticking together. She shouldn't have voted out Chanel. I don't think that was the right decision for her to make, to keep solidarity, but I don't think that she was thinking that way. I think she thought that she was solid in that 7, and that group was going to be able to protect her, when really she should have been thinking optically, like, oh, we definitely need to work together, even though I know that there's a lot of people that think it's racist for all the Black people decide to protect each other. But these are the reasons why, because if you don't protect each other, then you end up being really easy people to be voted out. Even if you're like really, a great player, even if you have all these idols, yes, I understand that they have really good reason to be voted out. I understand that. But it's also, if there's a person, for instance, like Jonathan, right? If there was a Black male, attractive Black male that had the same build and physique as Jonathan, and he was doing all that he was doing for their tribe before the merge, there's no way that he would have been able to get through the first vote out from the merge. And so there's just certain things that Black players have to go through that white players just don't necessarily understand, see, or experience. And I think that that's what was coming over Drea. It's like she wasn't ever thinking about race until she saw 2 people right there, right in front of her, that was like, uh-oh, wait, I need to maybe reconsider what I'm doing here, because that doesn't look great for my game.
Yeah, no, it's extremely well put. And Richard, you and I, we had some conversations off air about this prior to even jumping on the podcast. And I know that when we spoke about it, and I don't want to talk for you, you're going to have the floor in a second here. You mentioned that, being a South African, being a Black South African, there's certain things you can't relate with, because obviously in South Africa, you're in the majority, you're not in the minority like in America. But there is still certain things like being a Black man and how you have to conduct yourself. I'm sure you think about some of these things as well. What did you think of this specific moment here on the show? And, I guess culturally, how is it different for us that are international? Like, even for me, I try my best to understand, and I try and listen as much as I can. And I think that's a key thing here, is to listen before you speak, and to give each other the platform to talk. But there's a lot I don't even understand still. Richard, what was your thoughts in regards to this and what we saw unfold here on the TV?
Yeah, this is a good thing, because it highlights the sort of like differences, not only between all the different races, but even in a particular race, there's so many different experiences. Like for me, where I live, it's mostly Black people or mixed race people. So ever so rarely have I ever had like interactions with white people, up until I went to university, when I had to interact with all these different people. And my experience is different from someone else who was in primary school, high school, with other races and all of that. And racism means much more to them than it would for me. Because if I was in a similar situation as Drea, I wouldn't even notice that it's 2 people that are voted out. I'd look at them as just pure players that are voted out because of strategy, or just a lack of gameplay in any sort. So I think this really highlighted. And I think for Drea, her actually voting Chanel is actually a good thing, because it shows that she wasn't thinking of race. She was playing the game for what it is. But when she got to tribal council and then saw what happened, it put in a position where she was shocked and she had to process it. And we clearly saw that. So, I mean, I've also been in some of these chat groups where people just say, I'm done, I'm not going to watch Survivor. It's back-to-back seasons where people talk about politics. But it's like, look at it. Season 41 and 42 were back-to-back. And it's not like people in season 42 saw what happened in 41. And the same issue is still popping up. So it really shows this is a genuine thing and things that people should actually be thinking of. But, everyone has their own opinion. And that's it.
And also in Big Brother as well, though, right? And at the same year, Big Brother had the cookout that came together, and it's just really interesting, I think, because like we've increased the diversity absolutely, which I think is amazing on all these shows that we love. Because I really I've never really identified with many people on these shows that I've loved, and in my day-to-day life, so it's completely opposite to yours, Richard, is that I've always grown up being the only Black person in every situation that I've ever really been in, right? So all the schools I went in, all my best friends, like all the most people in my surroundings were always going to be white people other than my family. And even there, my dad married a white woman. So I have mixed race on that side as well. So I definitely can understand being the only Black person in a situation. But if I was with another Black person in one of these games, I'd be like, we got to stick together because that we're always going to be voted out first. Right. Like, and it's just something that I've always experienced. I've always had to mitigate being voted out first in any of these games, or being thought of as somebody that's, she's so strategic or she's so charming. Like I had to like downplay everything, and I have to really tippy toe around how I'm perceived by everybody else, because they'll use anything as a reason, a good reason to vote me out. So I think that that's also where those subconscious biases come in, that like, yes, it's a great reason. Yes, she has all these trinkets. She's really likable, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But if there was somebody that was white that had all those exact same credentials, would they be as targeted as Drea and being in that alliance with them and whatnot? And so this is where I think a lot of like the conversation needs to be looked at, where these subconscious biases lie, because they're just so subtle, and they're showing up now as we're increasing diversity on our shows.
And sorry, I like the point that you actually made about even in online games, not just what happens in Survivor. I've played almost like more than 5 Survivor online reality games, and the pattern does really occur where a season starts and then you see a person of color get voted out, person of color gets voted out, person of color gets voted out, and then the people actually comment like, "Hang on, what's happening here? Why is this pattern happened last season? It's happening this season. It's happening the next one." And it's really something that you really think of that, when you think of it, there's other stuff that obviously justifies why someone's voted out. Maybe they're too chaotic, maybe they're too brash, but noticing the pattern that, a person of color being voted out back to back to back is something that has happened in many seasons. If you have the chance to stop it, you need to take it with both hands, because it almost makes you morally justified to do it. And it's something bigger than the game. And, thankfully, we saw even with Marianne having to play her idol because of the
ramifications.
Ramifications of what could happen, in terms of what the fans would think that, oh, this was a, gameplay thing, nothing's off limits, which isn't the case. But, good for her that she did it.
Well, she read the fans correctly, because a lot of the fans have responded in that manner. One of the things I wanted to bring up as well is that, a definite, thing that I look at, I know people look at it when you say privilege, and they're like, oh, how can you mention privilege? But I do feel like, I do have a privilege. If I was to go play Survivor, where I could choose the personalities I want to play with, where you're almost locked in as Black players in Survivor now to play with, like you've mentioned, to tell other Black players, because you identify as being from the same race. But that's maybe the only thing you identify with. Like that person could be Philip Shepherd. Do you really want Philip Shepherd until the end? No. But he's the only other Black player on your season. You know what I mean? So,
and I couldn't be the person that takes him out, right? Because like people would be coming for me. Oh my gosh, no!
And that's the external pressure, which I picked up from, and I think a lot of people didn't understand that. And when and I would have, if I can't say now, sitting at home, it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, okay, I've watched Tribal Council twice. I understand her intentions. I've had the hindsight of seeing people's social media responses to it. But if I was sitting at that Tribal Council as a white guy, and I know this is not going to take a very big part of the podcast. If I heard subconscious bias coming up, I can't say I wouldn't have been acting defensive myself, because I would be afraid of how I was going to be perceived outside of the game. And it's an edited show. And am I going to look racist now when I had no intentions to be racist? So I understand why he
does.
like, he listened. Yeah.
Well, because of his reaction, in my opinion, like from his reaction, I was like, I didn't feel that they were being targeted. I didn't think that they were calling him out because he was the one that was calling the shot here. So they weren't ever really naming him as the person that was doing something subconsciously racist, but he immediately took offense to it. And I think the immediately taking offense to it is because I think that subconsciously for him, he's realizing that, oh, maybe subconsciously I was only targeting the 2 Black women this episode, even though Marianne is good for my game. She's good for my game, but I'm willing to lose her here because, I'm willing to save and protect Tori. What are the reasons here? Why is he so willing to lose Marianne, who would never vote him out, has 2 advantages that could be used and beneficial to you, but she could be the backup vote because I'm willing to lose her, but I'm not willing to lose Tori, who just won 2 immunity challenges, that's not really great friends with anybody. Nobody's going to be mad at for getting out of here. And it's come for me in, it was before we merged and kind of like blew up my game, calling me Goliath or whatever she was saying about him, and has voted for him before. So I think that he was feeling defensive because he was realizing that subconsciously he might have some biases that he was recognizing in that moment.
So I can't relate. Like, I can empathize with what Drea and Marianne has gone through, but I am not Marianne and Drea, but I am a white guy. And I can, if I was Jonathan in that situation and I heard that, I would have panicked, because again, how are you going to be perceived outside of the game? That would have been very much on his mind. I can't say, and it would have been just, wow, this conversation is going in a direction I didn't think. Now, I do think if we look at it, there's a few reasons why he could have gone that way. Like I said, Tori could have been a shield for him. The Marianne vote to me does not make sense. It's a dumb play, and I don't get that one. Drea having too many advantages kind of makes sense to me. One of the things that I did see the second time I watched this, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I don't know what's going on in his heart. I honestly don't. Like, I can only watch the edited TV show, right? But one of the things that I did notice in the tribal council was Drea turning back to him after she's gone through her thing and everything has calmed down, where she said, listen, I'm not talking about you. I love you. She said that at tribal council. Yes. So I think we need to listen to, like, I don't know if she just said it for the cameras. It didn't look that way. Drea doesn't come across as someone that plays up for the cameras, or she just doesn't come to me like that person. So she said that to him. Now, I don't know what's happened outside of the show, and I don't know, when interviews come out, we might get a completely different picture on it. But just based on the limited information that I've had there, I think that everybody was coming at it from a different angle here, and they were being misunderstood. And that's maybe the optimist in me that are thinking that's how it went. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I can see that being a perspective and could be true. Yeah. But I also know in my lifetime, I've definitely done things to make the powerful white man feel more secure in their position. And I wouldn't be surprised if Drea was trying to calm him down, not make him feel defensive, not make him go on the attack. And, you know, she was like leaning on him at one point to make him feel comfortable with her again. She doesn't want him to think that she's against him. She doesn't want him to be targeting him. And so I think that, So I think that a part of that is that the social dynamic between especially Black women and alpha male white men. I think that she was also playing a role to be accepted by him, and so that they can continue with their dynamic and that it doesn't become a race war. So I do think that she was selectively choosing to act in a way that was, because remember he said to her, like, you're being aggressive. And you saw the faces of Chanel when he's saying you're being aggressive, and she wanted to completely flip that narrative that he was trying to paint of her and be like, I'm being very, agreeable. I'm being very understanding. You know what I mean? So I think that she was being very careful with how she was managing him, because she didn't want this aggressive label to be the new storyline of her journey on Survivor. So that's one thing. And there was one other thing that I wanted to say about Jonathan. When he was like, when Jeff said, like, if you guys want to play your idols or something like that, like, it's up to you guys. And then Jonathan was like, yeah, you guys better go play them. And like kind of urging them to go and play their idols. And I was like, see? See, anyways, he just I
There was a
felt
few
as though
people. There was a few people though, Chantal, and again, and again, I'm not like I'm purely looking at this from a game standpoint. Some people are going to be like, Chris here out defending Jonathan the whole time.
Oh no,
I'm
it's
just looking at
chill.
it from a game. I'm just looking at it from a game point, right? If I was out there, there's $1 million at stake. I'm making
Yeah.
sure people are playing idols. Like, I'm sorry, like even though I understand the conversation was bigger than Survivor, I understand it. It's still $1 million. There are people, Richard, online that are saying Jonathan should have just gone home. He should have just laid on the sword for them this episode. And I don't think that is.
I don't think that at all. No.
Yeah.
But I also like I do understand why both of them had to play their idols, because they know that the
Yes.
backlash is going to be that using racist strategy is pretty repulsive. So I understand why they had to use their idols. But like, how sad is it that they had to play their idols in order for them to not get backlash from the American public or the
more
viewers,
Marianne,
you
in
know?
my opinion. More Marianne. Like I think Drea always she said she read the votes were coming her way. That's what she said at Tribal Council. If that's true or not, I don't know. But I felt like Drea always had to play our idol. But a lot of people will criticize the ones that aren't looking at the bigger picture here will criticize Marianne for playing an idol when I don't think she was going home in any circumstance.
But she was
And
the backup vote still, probably, right? Unless Lindsay
Probably,
did
yeah.
some fancy footwork and they did do Tori without Jonathan knowing, which I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case as well, because when we were going into Tribal, that's what I thought was happening. Like Lindsay was like, okay, we're voting Marianne, but like actually
that could
half
be,
of them
yeah.
vote Tori out. And so maybe that's why Marianne was so sure. But she did know that she was the backup plan when Jonathan
That's fair.
approached her and told her about Drea. So she might
That's
as well
fair. That's
play
fair.
it.
Yeah. So I can see people criticizing her, but yeah, once again, to come to your main topic, to feel like you need to play it due to the optics outside the game. And that's what I think the thing that a lot of people are missing here is there was a lot of people who were worried about things outside of the game. And I think that, you've got Marianne worried about how she was going to be perceived. You've got Drea worried about how they were going to be perceived or she was going to be perceived. And then I think Jonathan also, I mean, if you hear these things going out there, not that they were calling him directly, you automatically think worst case scenario, you know about the stories of people getting cancelled and, you know, people blacklisting you and all those things. Like, I mean, this could change your career for the worse, in the long term. So I do feel really, I empathize with a lot of people here this episode, but I'm really happy we got an opportunity to talk about this. It's a tough topic, one that I didn't really realize I was going to get into this season because it came from nowhere. Like this whole season has not been politically driven, and it's still a season that I enjoy. And I'm really sad that people are looking at this and saying this one episode, this one interaction now makes us not want to watch the show, because I feel like as we become a more diverse show on Survivor, there are going to be more of these conversations happening. It will disappear as things have been said, and as things move past it. I'm sure there will be a time when people can move on from it, and it won't be the main point of discussion, because Survivor as a show will also feel like a lot of it has been publicly addressed. But yeah, it's teething point. Like if you thought bringing more diverse people from different backgrounds into the show, into it, and this wasn't going to happen as a discussion, you were fooling yourself. It was always going to come with the territory. But I do want to go back to someone who was actually on the show, Tori. I thought she had a very interesting post on Instagram here, where she said that, she's got, where was it? So when empathy is hard. So I'm going to read from this part here because it is quite a long post. She says, now let's talk about tribal council. Some of us have never experienced anything that Marianne and Drea was talking about. You've never thought about your race. You've never had to think about your race. You've never watched Survivor and thought, why do you keep voting out white people back to back? So it is possible that the reason you struggle to have empathy is because you aren't able to relate, because you've never thought something similar, because you don't understand, because you don't share their experience. I saw the evidence of their pain. Did I understand their emotions? No. Did I share their emotions? No. Did I see their emotions? Yes. I've had nothing but peace and respect ever since that tribal council happened 1 year ago. I understand that I might never understand. That is why I side with empathy. I acknowledge that I'll never understand and that they've gone through. Not understanding does not give me the right to invalidate their experience. Not understanding does not mean I'm right and they are wrong. My Survivor dream was over because of what happened at the tribal council, yet I still had empathy. Let that sink in. If I can have empathy in that moment, I hope that you can have a step back, understand that you might never understand, and still lead with empathy. And I thought brilliant words from her. Now, I know Tori's also gotten some flack on social for other things, which I didn't read. I don't actually follow social all that often, but I saw that and I thought, if there's anybody that should feel aggrieved by what went down, it's probably Tori, because she ended up being the vote. at the end, but she got herself in that position. She can understand it. She's got empathy to a degree, and yeah, it was an interesting tribal council, but I thought everybody did the best that they can with what they've had. I'm very interested now to see how does the game move forward here. Does this remain a big talking point now, Chantal, for Drea and Marianne moving forward in the game? Like, what conversations do you think is going to happen in camp next episode?
I mean, I think that they're going to go through the entire tribal council. Marianne is a bit of a chatterbox. I don't think Drea might be offering up too much information, but I do think that that Marianne will give a play-by-play on what happened at that tribal council. I feel like she will be leading that conversation, letting everybody know what went down, probably explaining that they don't have their idols anymore, so they can look a little bit less vulnerable. Probably saying like, we love everybody, that we don't think that anybody is racist. They're probably going to do a lot of making people feel okay, and I think that they'll be able to move on. The people that are the biggest forces in the game so far are people that have experienced some sort of, most likely experienced some sort of segregation, or some sort of something to do with their race or their background or their sexual orientation. They've probably received some prejudice in their life, so they're going to understand. Like, Omar's going to understand a little bit of what Drea and Marianne went through. Hai is going to understand to a certain extent. Romeo is going to understand to a certain extent. And who else is left that wasn't on that tribe? There's one more person. Who else? Who's the fourth person? Mike is, I don't know. Somebody says he's half Puerto Rican and someone says he's half black. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I think he's Puerto Rican. I've seen. I think, but I mean, I don't want to assume.
Half Irish or something. Half Irish, half Puerto Rican.
So, I mean, he might have experienced some, or within his family, seen some different prejudices happen. So I do feel that people are going to understand what happened in the tribal council. And I think that it's actually going to be probably another conversation that they have. And that I think it's probably going to dissipate and be okay. So I think the season is going to be fine. I think that people are going to learn from it. I think that they're going to be really happy and proud that they were part of a season where they're able to overcome something like this. So I think it's going to be positive for the players moving forward in this season. And
yeah,
I think
I hope so, because I feel like I've loved this season from beginning to end so far. It's been a great season. The characters have been amazing. I'm Drea's #1 fan. It hasn't changed because of this episode and her going through an experience. I'm not supposed to. I don't look like someone that should be her fan, but I'm a massive fan of hers. She's playing a great game. She's got a lot of advantages. I like. Chantal knows me. She's been on podcasts with me for a long time. I like the characters. I like the explosive players, which she's all of that. So it's not changing for me moving forward. Speaking the truth, he says it's literally going to take generations to erase the stigma around race-related conversations, and we're only season 2 of the BIPOC initiative, so Survivor fans are in for a long ride. So there may be a lot more conversations in the future. Christian says here, Mike is like a grandfather of the tribe. He's 100 years old, right? So
it's like not that old. It makes me feel really old when people say that. I'm like, ugh, like he's in like my dating range, which is funny. I just want to add one thing too, though, is that like I know that in this particular episode, we were talking specifically about race, black and white. But if I was, say, a white lesbian and there was 2 other lesbians that were sitting on female, no, lesbians are female. So 2 other lesbians that were sitting over there that just got voted out back to back. And there was one other lesbian that was on the tribe with me, and I was going to be voting them out of this game. I would probably have a second thought there too. It's like anytime there's an other and you're noticing a pattern and you're part of a group, a minority of some sort that looks like, okay, you're kind of, am I being targeted? Like you would get nervous of your longevity in the game the more that the numbers of people that look like you or identify in the same way that you do start to dwindle. So I know it's black and white in this episode, but it would happen in any sort of pattern that you're seeing if you identified with the people that were being voted out in that pattern.
It's interesting you mentioned that. because at work, like I'll use this as an example. Obviously, living
Yeah.
in New Zealand, being a South African immigrant who've moved here, automatically when I work with other South Africans, I'm like, oh, you're a South African. Hey, we've got something in common. We know what braai is, like a barbecue. We know certain things that's cultural for us, right?
Yeah.
And at work, when there's certain conversations happening, this guy, he doesn't fit quite in because he's a little bit. Because South Africans are very straightforward. We come to the point. If you watch Survivor South Africa, it's always explosive because people they say it how it is. I've kind of learned to tone that down because to fit in culturally with New Zealanders, they're a lot more relaxed. They're not as in your face and telling you up front. So when I hear conversations happening, oh, this person's not fitting in or they're just being too direct, I can't help sometimes but take it a little bit personal because I'm South African and they're talking to me about another South African. So I think in that situation, I can understand it, that it's also, globally, there's certain stigmas about certain countries and things like that. So in that sense, I can, to a certain degree, I guess, relate to it a little bit. And I think it's interesting when you go down this rabbit hole. There is so many different layers that you could talk about. You could actually do a whole 3-hour podcast just about this.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm coming back to what Chantel said. So one of the viewers in these groups where people comment about the whole, race thing, someone actually made an example as Jonathan, that part of the reason why the All Males Alliance was started was because of, instead of looking at race as a thing, you can look at strength. If Jonathan saw two people that were challenge beasts and he's voting out another challenge beast, it doesn't make sense, because if that challenge beast goes, that means he's next. So in these two contexts, people are doing the same thing, but because this one involves race, people look at it in a different way, because obviously race is something that no one has control of. It's an outside game thing, but being a challenge beast, it's an in-game thing. So
it goes back to instinct, right? For us as humankind, like when we started and there was like different tribes and there was a saber-toothed tiger running into camp, you needed to know there was someone next to you that would pick up the spear and help you fight, So you're going to obviously be close to the people that if it's visually or personality wise or whatever that is that you relate to, there's this tribalism thing that for us as human beings are always going to be there. And so when these topics come up, people, it's almost they choose teams, like I know I'm team this or I'm team that, but yeah, it's hard for people to come to the middle and just have a conversation like we're having right now. Like, I mean, I hope I've given both of you a great platform to talk here. And I've really appreciated the fact that you allowed for me even to, because I feel like sometimes, it's tough as a white guy these days. You can't always express your thoughts as well. And it's great to talk about what Jonathan may have gone through. And you guys didn't just immediately shoot me down and say, oh, well, don't even consider thinking about what might have gone through in his head. Like, we don't want to know about it, And I think that's what it is. It's like, let's allow to, like if it's a 5-minute or 2-minute conversation around what potentially could have gone through in that person's head, what went through Andrea's head, let's look at all the different possibilities and try to understand each other better as a society. I think, and that's what's missing for me personally, when I look at a lot of things these days online, or I look at news, depending on which channel you're turning into or where you're getting your social media from, you're going to get very one-sided information and people just thinking and acting the same way without having real conversations, which I feel like is lacking these days. I don't know if you guys feel the same about that or not, but I felt comfortable, and I knew I would feel comfortable with both of you to be able to also dive into the other side of this, which I think is important, for us to understand each other.
Well, and that's one thing that, I said it on my channel when I was talking about this episode, is that I love about reality TV. So reality TV was like a big stigma at one point, be like, oh my God, I keep watch reality TV. And it was kind of like my dirty little secret. But it actually is an opportunity to watch all these social dynamics play out on things that I find interesting. I like social strategy games. I find it interesting when real life situations come out through these game shows that I like to watch. Yes, sometimes these conversations are really uncomfortable. Yes, we're going to be noticing some people having opinions that are very different from your own, and you're learning more about people. But I think for myself, my fascination is with human behavior, with human dynamics, with the social economical structure of like people's lives and where they've come from. And when you see them on your screen playing a game for a lot of money, so the stakes are high, it's really amazing to see what comes out that we could talk about and learn and grow and experience. Like, I could write a paper on this. this? Like really? Like I gotta write a thesis on what has just happened on our TV show, on a Survivor, our TV show that people really like, turn their nose up against. So I love reality television for the fact that it offers a platform for new voices to be heard, for us to have these conversations that were never available to the general public to be having. And I think it's really positive for the growth and understanding that we can have for each other and other cultures. So I'm a thumbs up for reality TV for giving us the platform and the opportunity to discuss these things.
Yeah, and I mean, you get to make great friends. If it wasn't for reality TV, Chantal and both Richard, I probably would never have gotten to know both of you.
Who are
and to have you on. Yeah, and it brought us together. Russell Muscle TV, hello, welcome to the live stream. Speaking the Truth says also 100% you, Chris, for having people who can actually speak to the experience on your podcast. I was disappointed when one of my favorite pods had two white guys having discussions with zero nouns. And, a lot of credit should go to Jake as well. He's the other part of this podcast. He stepped out and he said, listen, I'm going to take a step back this week. Not that I'm not comfortable to come on here and talk about it, but I just feel like if you've got two great guests who can come on here and talk about it from a different experience, have them on rather. And both myself and Jake looked at it and we thought, listen, we love to talk about the strategy. We love to talk about all this kind of stuff, but it is great to have, I think, diversity and thought. And speaking the truth, if you like this type of thing, Richard and both, Zoe from the Hangout Room, who's also in the live stream, they will be a permanent fixture for Survivor South Africa on doing some of the podcasts there. And I think South Africa is an interesting culture and it's got a very interesting background and history to it as well, that these things will come up at some point when we're having conversations about Survivor in South Africa, I'm sure. It's just going to be natural, right, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these some race line topics have sort of happened in the previous seasons, and it's going to be something awesome to talk about. I mean, I'll just mention this thing that in the most recent season of Survivor SA with, not sure if you know Toriso.
Teresa,
when the tribes when the tribes randomly split, she was in a tribe where most of them were white people or Afrikaans, and she felt like she didn't relate with some of them. And that's why throughout the remainder of the first episode, we just saw her being secluded because of how difficult it is to actually get into that space and feel comfortable to be yourself. And, she felt ostracized. But that's just like a glimmer of how that context can happen in South African Survivor as well. It happens everywhere. New Zealand Survivor, possibly. Australian Survivor, all the others. It happens everywhere.
Yeah. Listen, and Teresa, if she's ever listening, I know she's a listener of this podcast. She might listen to this episode. Who knows if she's ever listening? Sure. She's got a young boy who's the future of South African rugby, man. That guy is playing. I see photos every week on his socials about him playing games and things like that. She's a proud mother. I got to meet his son when I interviewed her as well. Such a great personality. And she is rumored to be back on this next season for Survivor South Africa Return of the Outcast. So hopefully we get a little bit of redemption for her as well. But I know exactly the moment you're talking about. And it was discussed at that time by me and I think Riley at that time that optically it just didn't, something looked not right and she couldn't fit in and it was discussed. But we've spoken about this episode of Survivor here in the US. I think that we had some great discussions. I still love this season. I hope the people that are listening to this in any case know they're in it for the long haul. They're willing to go through all of these different things and have open discussions. They're open-minded about what's going on out there. I hope people stick with the show. I think Survivor 42 should not be written off because of one episode, one thing. I still think Drea, her intentions were pure. She did not come into that tribal council to have a certain agenda that some people think she may have had.
And Jeff forced it out of her.
Exactly. I was just going to say again, Jeff needs to, I think he needs to, and again, the counter argument to that is that Jeff wants to open the discussion, and would this discussion have happened if Jeff didn't do it? Would the discussion have happened?
But the problem is, though, it's because it's part of a game. Yeah. Like it makes it really difficult for any of the players to navigate the game effectively. And so even if she was having that experience, she could have kept her mouth quiet, played her idol, and this episode would have gone fine. Marianne or Tori would have still gone home, and it wouldn't have brought up this discussion. So I'm appreciative of the discussion.
And she could have done this in the exit press, right? If Jeff wants to have these discussions, I feel like we need Jeff back from back in the day when he did the reunion shows. And then and now the problem is obviously the reunion happens straight after the season. So there's no time to go and reflect on it, which which is not great. Like, I liked it the first season because I thought it was a little bit different, but in hindsight, you don't get to reflect on it. But I feel like Jeff, he's a talk show host. He's always wanted to be a talk show host by nature. So he's turning Survivor into a talk show where, you're right. There's only a certain element of how much you can tell people in the game. It is a game. If it's going to put you on a disadvantage, then allow them to play their game until the end. Nothing's going to prevent Drea from talking about her experience at the end of the season when $1 million is not at stake. And I think that maybe if Jeff could tweak himself a little bit there, I've gotten to the point where I used to bag Jeff quite a bit for a lot of the things that he's done recently. Now I kind of feel sorry for the guy, and I'm like, he's trying his best, he's trying different things, but I just think he's a little bit off here.
I think that you have a really good point, though. I think that if they chose to do it maybe in her confessional, being like, what was going on with you there? Like, I know that you didn't want to say much because we're at tribal council, but like, what was happening with you? I think that would have been, more palatable for all the viewers, because it looks now that they brought race into the game for strategy. And really, you could see that it wasn't her intention, because she didn't want to say how she felt. She did no, I don't know what to say. I don't know how I'm feeling. I don't know. Like, she wanted
very
to say
defensive.
nothing about it.
Yeah.
And he pulled it out of her. And then obviously in that moment, then, Marianne had a similar reaction that she might not have said anything about, but she would have probably just done something. But he opened up that conversation. I just don't know if tribal is the right place for it, for people's games. Right?
I agree.
Discussion's amazing, but for people's games, you don't necessarily want to bring up these things. If we think just back to 39, when all those discussions around, what was the man's name that we shouldn't? Dan. And a lot of people didn't want to say how they were feeling around him because they're still playing a game. And so it's a really like the balance of sharing your truth and playing a game. It's just really, it's unfair that he brought that out. So now they have to navigate them trying to lower their threat factor. But then, like, if they win the game now, people are going to say they won the game because, like, people were scared to target them because of race. And so he now has, like, opened up the floor for race to be tainting the season, when she could still have had all the same feelings, and we could have gotten the same conversations after the game is done and let the game play out as it was supposed to. So that's just kind of my 2 cents for 4.
Yeah, so speaking of the truth, he agrees. He says the same as us. Jeff wants a talk show. He should look at the challenges format and do an after show, which the challenges format could work really well. Maybe be a little bit more dramatic than some of those reunion shows that seem to be pretty cookie cutter when it comes to CBS. Also here, I almost completely forgot. So Christian, thanks for reminding me. He says, hey, Chris, just who's your final 5 in the finale episode? Just curious. We haven't done our rankings this week, and we do rankings every single week here on the podcast. But when you're having big conversations like this, it almost feels so arbitrary or so mundane to go back into the rankings, because we've spoken about some really good topics here. But maybe we'll leave it on this. Let me just do a quick share of where the rankings are sitting currently for you that have not been on the show previously. So we've got currently in number 1, Omar throughout all of the weeks. We've got Drea in number 2. High is still holding on barely to number 3. Jonathan had early momentum week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4, but he is starting to fall back here on the pecking order. So it gives you guys a little bit of a visibility of where the rankings are sitting. So Chantel, we'll start with you if you're ready. Can you talk us through who you would rank as your number 3, your number 2, and your number 1 here for this week?
All right. I think that who has put themselves kind of in a good position and showed me that they know how to play the game. I think that Lindsay did a really good job. I think that the fact that she was able to suss out that what Jonathan was suggesting wasn't the right plan. We'll never know what she was actually going to do. I was under the impression before that tribal that she was going to be flipping the vote, not telling Jonathan about it, taking out Tori, and he would have to just deal with it after. That's what I was thinking when we're going into that tribal, what was going to happen. So if that's the case, I think that that's really strong for her. I think the fact that she's invested on keeping the Taku 4 together, I think that's really good for her as well. It's hard for me to think about Drea and Marianne, because I don't 100% know how this episode is going to affect their game. Drea always is going to have a ton of advantages and trinkets and whatnot, and she's going to be playing a little bit more like cautious now. So I'm going to put Drea, I think, in my number 2 spot, because even though she might get some blowback from this, and people might target it. Like, I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I do think that she has enough stuff that she's going to be able to make it through to potentially the top 5. You know, she has she can steal Mike's idol if she wants to with the beware advantage. She has the 3-way amulet. So she has that. Eventually, maybe 2 people will be voted out. It could be another idol. And then she also has an extra vote. So she has a lot of things that can help her get to the final 5. So I'm going to put her in the number 2 position. And regardless of whether or not you know, she was tipped off by the fact that it was Rocksroy that went out, she correctly played her idol. And so I'm going to put her in the 2nd position there. And in the number 1 position, I'm still going to give that to Omar. Omar, you know, he's been able to get his agenda across every single week, it seems, and nobody is looking at him as being a threat at all. And I think that is a really shows how great of a game player that he is. He chooses to vote on the wrong side just to make sure that the outsiders feel as though he is with them still. So he's still getting information on all sides. And so the fact that he has all the information and he's able to make plays that people are willing to go along with, I think that's really powerful. With this whole flip, you know, it seems like High's going to get all the blowback and he's going to be cruising. So, and he was definitely for, not for the all male alliance, and definitely was teaming up with High to like not allow that to go down. And he's not going to, it seems like he's not going to get any blowback from it. So that's my order. Number 1, Omar. Number 2, Drea. Number 3, Lindsay.
Yeah, all great picks. And just before I get into Richard's picks here, Charlotte says Jeff now seems to be an excitable child with zero filter. Agree with you, Charlotte. Welcome to the live stream all the way from the UK. Then also here, Christian is saying, I think Omar's edit seems to be perfect and obvious without any flaws or mistakes. He may be getting the Rick Devens edit and then goes out on fire. And that would be a shocker. We know there's always a fallen angel each episode. I hope not. I'm actually enjoying Omar's game so far. Richard, who do you have as your number 3, 2, and 1?
It's actually similar, but for me, I think that Drea will take the number 3 spot. Because obviously, I mean, she still has like the immunity, the knowledge is power, the extra vote, amulet, and all of that. So obviously, she's in a good position. And I mean, like Chantel was saying, that obviously with her having this experience, that changes her game. So it wouldn't be surprising if the change is so bad that she actually ends up seeing herself in hot water. But I think she still is in a relatively good position, especially given that she can steal Mike's idol or something like that. Then on number 2, I'd say Mike, because even though in this situation he didn't want Rocksroy to go, I do feel like I'm sort of like bringing up a new concept in Survivor, sort of like a dirt shield, like someone that sort of like takes High sort of like Mike's dirt shield, such that if something, you know, like a betrayal happens, Mark can say that, hey, I don't want to do that, but my number 1 ally, High, wanted to do that. So the fault is on him. So he seems to be having no blood on his hands. He has good social game. No one really wants him out. So I think he has it good going for him this season at number 2. Then, I mean, obviously, number 1 is Omar. I just don't, you know, I mean, I've had experience playing this game online, and I just don't understand how he's so good at, you know, manipulating High to sort of like, when High has this fixation of, well, High is one person to say, I want Romeo out, and he changes to Rocksroy. It's interesting how, you know, Omar can just, you know, manipulate him to sort of like make a decision that Omar actually wants. Even Lindsay going home wasn't something High wanted to happen, but Omar was able to make him think that way. So he's clearly playing the game the right way. And plus, I mean, Omar has good relationship with the people at the bottom as well. Like, what isn't he doing wrong? Like, legit, he's playing awesome. But you know, I hope.
Well, does Omar have a little bit of the Dan Gisling mist out there on Survivor, because he just seems to be misting people?
I think that people just don't find him threatening, right? I think the fact that he's not an alpha male, but he's still a straight male, I think that is just, he's just not threatening to people, and they don't think that he's playing as hard, and he's coming across as trustworthy. And I think that I just think that they're just not threatened by him at all. And they just take what he says as like, oh, he's just a nice guy that is being truthful and honest. And even how he goes about switching the votes, he doesn't really throw people under the bus. He's not really deceptive in a way that is kind of slimy, like he's quite, how he does it, like it's not really a miss. I guess he's just like very kind with his approach on how he shifts things and changes plans. He's very good.
Who knew? You just needed to be kind and listen to people. You might do well in the game. Richard, sorry, I know we interrupted you there. Was there anything else you wanted to say on Omar?
Oh no, going back to Omar, like it's really interesting because we saw that in the previous episode, Romeo was a bit chaotic and he wanted to, he thought he was in trouble, of which he sort of was because his name was in the picture. In this episode, we actually see Omar sort of like calming Romeo that your name is actually on the block, but please calm down. I can handle it and make sure that.
Romeo's like, I was like, Omar, sorry, Romeo, chill. He was so like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it seemingly worked because it seems like Romeo wasn't causing any chaos. And another point is after Roxroy joined the jury, one thing he said was that means Hai and Romeo got together to get him out, and no mention of Omar. So I think he's off. He's not going to get in trouble for this, and good on him. I hope he wins. I really do hope he wins.
I think Omar. We'll talk about my top 3 now as well, but I don't agree with Sonia about Omar having the Shan edit. Like maybe as a big player or a very big strategist or strategical player out there, I guess. But Shan had very big social flaws. She didn't listen to other people, wanted her way. There was some strategical flaws, social flaws where she was like not. Yeah, she was getting angry at Ricard for having a fruit, for goodness sake. Like, I mean, I just don't see Omar getting that way. So I feel that there's differences. Maybe in big player edit, it could be something similar, but I would actually argue it's maybe more Hai at this stage. I really don't think. I don't think Hai is making it. I don't think Hai is. I honestly think he's out next. It's how I see the game unfolding, and it's a shame because he is my preseason winner pick. Omar is someone I completely the pettiness here from Richard. Omar is someone that I completely underestimated in the beginning of the season when they did the preseason things. I didn't rate him high. Jake had him.
Super fan though. You didn't rate him high, and he was a super fan.
I thought that, because when he was talking, he didn't like, and I know it's good to be flexible. I felt like him being like this exotic animal lover that does all these different things. He was very flaky in his answers. He wasn't giving us anything. So I was like, he doesn't know how he wants to play the game. He's got no plan. Like I was just not that into him in regards to, but I mean, like that's just preseason. And normally preseason is so different from what actually happens when you go out there and play the game. But Jake, to his credit, had Omar very high on his list from the start and really rated him. So Jake was clearly more onto it than what I was. But my top 3 actually is an exact replica of Chantel's. Like we've done this for too long, but I do think Lindsay definitely deserves to get that 3rd spot. She, was the calming factor within that alliance when Omar wasn't there to try and keep Jonathan on track. I felt like, we're not seeing enough of Lindsay, which is a shame on the show. And I don't want to shade the show about it too much because I feel like they have done a really good job this season to show more people in confessionals, and it's not as bad as like Australian Survivor was this last season or some other shows in the past. So I think they're doing a good job, but that to me just tells me Lindsay's not winning.
Do you think she's getting the Erica edit?
She could get the Erica edit. Very easily could get, like, I mean, I'm hoping it's not because to be honest with you, I wasn't a fan of the Erica edit.
I wasn't either, but
give me more of her.
I would like to see if she's winning. Like I would like to see more of her story if that's the case. It's kind of what
exactly, because then you get the fans coming at Erica afterwards and it's like you didn't play a big game and blah blah blah. But it's like we didn't really see much of her game, and it's so unfair to like her to get the blame for the edit because that's out of her control what people show on the actual show at the end of the day. But yeah, I've got her in 3rd. I've got Drea in 2nd. Drea played the idol correctly. She was going to go home if she didn't. She read the situation. I still think Drea has it in her to make things happen. She's shown us more than once now that she's going to play aggressive when she needs to, and I like that in a player. And then lastly, Omar, for all of the reasons that we've said, I think that Omar is playing the best game. It's, in my opinion, Omar's game to lose at this stage. And then Christian here said his final 5 would be Drea, Omar, Marianne, Romeo, and Mike. I've had a few people on Twitter tell me that I'm sleeping on
Romeo?
Marianne. Yeah, the Romeo's not getting there, but a few people on Twitter have said to me that I'm sleeping on Marianne. They're saying Marianne's going to go way deeper than what I'm seeing. Richard,
I mean,
you got the biggest reaction there.
I don't know. Like, I mean, to be honest,
Can
I
you
don't
sleep
wanna
on Marianne? Can you not see her coming? Like, I feel like everybody would see her coming because she's just the ball of energy.
She's the loudest person. But I mean, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but on the first episode, I just knew that, if I was on an island with her, I wouldn't get, I mean, I tried to do my best to get along with her, but I feel like her personality would really like be in my face and it wouldn't work well. But I mean, we've seen her use her emotion as a way of gameplay to make people do a certain thing. We're seeing her being able to have a good read on the outside audience in terms of her playing the idol, and she's a super fan. I mean, she's always constantly commenting on Twitter about her takes. So clearly there is a good player in her, and we're seeing her having some good reads. But I mean, I don't know, it's like hit or miss. But I'm not too much of a Marianne fan, but she's a fan.
I can't see this particular jury voting for Marianne over most other people in the game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
No.
I see that. Maybe if she's sitting next to maybe Romeo and
If Drea
has to
gets
be
the
like-
end, she wins in a landslide, in my opinion. in this one.
exactly. I feel like Drea could
Landslide.
win against most people at this point. Omar, I think, could win against most people. It'd be very
Well, I
interesting.
think
to see
Omar versus Drea. I think Omar
That'd be
versus Drea. Drea at this stage would be the one. Like, I honestly think she would get the votes against them because Omar's game is so understated in the shadows. Like, it's not in your face. Like, Drea's game is out there for everybody to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, we also have Sonia here saying that, just correcting me on my take. And that's always why it's so hard, Sonia, when you're getting these chats coming in, you don't know what someone means by it, but she's saying, I'm not saying Omar plays the same as Shan, but he's getting her winners edit, which makes sense. I mean, Shan had a really good winners edit early on. I think a lot of people, I thought she was going to win that season as well, just based on that. I know Chantel was very happy that she could still be the first Chantel from Canada to go out there and win the show.
So yeah, Marianne can't win it either. She can't be the first Black Canadian female to win Survivor. So nope, she ain't winning.
Keep the spot for Chantel. Hey guys, it's been so great to talk to you about this week's episode of Survivor 42. For those that stuck around all the way, an hour and 35 minutes in, I really appreciate it. There is some great interviews still hitting the channel at the moment. There's going to be some more shorter form videos on the challenge as we go into All Stars 3 as well that will hit the channel in the next couple of weeks, just to say thank you for all those challenge fans that have subscribed to the channel. And Chantel, as always, will be back with us to talk about a lot of challenge content here on the Nullified Take channel as well. But Chantel, what else do you have going on at the moment on Reality Realness with 3 S's for those who don't know?
So things are getting kind of quiet right now. We're coming to the end of Big Brother. Obviously, still doing Survivor on Thursdays, usually at 7 p.m. Eastern. But next week is going to be a little bit different for me because I will be going to New York with Rob as a podcast. And so we're doing a live know-it-alls on Wednesday. So I will be over in New York with all the festivities, meeting all the other podcasters, meeting all the other patrons, and meeting Rob in real life. So that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on. Hopefully I'll do a lot of Instagram stories and even maybe putting some up on my channel stories and using that so you guys can see what's going on with, I heard that we're supposed to maybe meet Chanel, might be someone that we meet.
Oh, wow.
I saw that Jamal is going to be there this weekend. Obviously,
he is.
And Wendell. And so there's probably going to be other survivors that I'm going to get a chance to meet next week. And so I'll do my best to get some pictures, get some insight, get maybe some interviews. Who knows what's going to happen, but I will be immersed in a survivor heavy community. So just stay tuned to what's to come, because I have no idea what to expect and who I'm going to meet, but I'll definitely do my best to document as much of it as possible. And then when I get back on Thursday at some point, I'll figure out what I'm going to do about the rest of Big Brother. But Thursday will probably be concluding the season, but I'm not sure about the times and all that stuff right now.
Chantel remains the hardest working woman in the industry at the moment with doing all of these different things for the fans out there. So please go give her a follow, a subscription if you haven't done so already at Reality Realness with 3 S's. It's also one of the channels that I feature here on the Nullified Take channel as well. Richard, where can people follow you if they wanted to hear your takes on episodes? I know you're not going to be back until Survivor South Africa is probably to do some content for that. We might do some off-season content prior to that season as well. It's exciting for everybody that's from South Africa. But if people wanted to hear your thoughts just in general, where can they follow you on Twitter or any other socials?
I try not to say much on Twitter because I have this thing in my mind that one of the producers for the show is going to see what I say and then not cast me because of that. Like, I have this weird paranoia that always goes in my head. But otherwise,
Leru, you didn't see this. If Leru watches this, just forget about this whole podcast, please.
Yeah, I was actually
over there.
I was actually talking to Dean about 3 hours ago in terms of, me being scared that some of the things I say here could actually, be influenced. But he was like, nah, don't worry about that. It shouldn't be something.
Jack Berger, by the way, Jack Berger got on the show after doing a podcast. So I don't think just by doing a podcast, you won't get on the show, to be honest with you. So you could still get there. Fingers crossed for you, Richard.
Yeah, but on all my socials, it's basically my name, Richard_Gobedi, and that's about it.
Great. Go give Richard a follow if you guys want to hear more about his thoughts on this season. As always, guys, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll catch you next time, and bye.